you make of Mark Zuckerberg squarely putting the target on Apple here, as Tim Cook has hit back at Facebook about how it handles data, how it handles privacy?
Look, I think it's less about this war between Apple and Facebook, or, you're looking at kind of the YouTube versus Facebook. The reality is Facebook is one of the dominant companies in terms of mobile time spent. The reality is, despite all of this fear that people were abandoning Facebook or not using its applications, the reality is there's 1.5 billion people using Facebook every single day. Facebook, not all the other applications, but Facebook itself. There's 800 million people using Marketplace. I mean, to me, I have never used the Marketplace tab. I don't know anyone who uses the Marketplace tab. They're saying there's 800 million people using that Marketplace tab to transact, to cars. They actually highlighted cars as becoming a place of real transfer where people are buying and selling cars. There's just so many things that Facebook is doing that are not always obvious to someone in the U.S. And I think there are places in the world like Indonesia where Facebook Marketplace is the default way in which goods are bought and sold. And so there are really some big differences globally. And I think you mentioned one of them, like looking at iMessage versus Facebook Messenger overseas. Not all of that is apparent to a U.S. investor. And I think the reality is, as you look out more broadly over the next few years, Facebook's got a lot of different initiatives that are at very early stages of monetization. I mean, they're just scratching the surface of Messenger and WhatsApp. Facebook Watch, which you mentioned, or IGTV, which is the Instagram video platform. Very, very early stages. But what you do see is tremendous engagement across the Facebook apps, the family of apps, I should say, and that creates a big long-term opportunity. I think that's what the street is excited about, is that they're just beginning to give hints of monetization for all of these things beyond the core news feed.
He did talk about, Sarah, different battlefields, as Rich mentioned, that we don't often discuss. He also, with respect to Apple, talked about how, Apple is storing iMessages on iPhones on servers in China. It was a very different tact and a very different tone from Mark Zuckerberg, much more direct than we've heard in prior years. What do you think the strategy is there?
I think he's trying to really paint a picture of how difficult it's going to be, but that he's excited about the future. He said that Facebook Stories and the whole Stories product across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, it's actually going to be a bigger sharing format than the news feed over time. And I think that was one thing that helped investors get a sense of what the vision is there. Not just that revenue is going to slow in the short term and that it's going to be tough to monetize those things, but that eventually more people will be using that. So I think he was trying to give a sense of how big these things could be, that Watch could eventually be as big as YouTube, that you should think of Messenger like iMessage. He was trying to give people a picture for how to think about the future of the company.
So, Rich, you've laid out a great argument for, why we should still believe in Facebook, but what about all the skepticism? What about all the mistakes they've made? What about some of the lackluster engagement with their core product, which is now the newsfeed?
Look, I would just echo Sarah's comment on, Instagram is a huge business. Huge. I mean, I look at Instagram and go, this is the modern day cure for boredom. Mark Cuban used to talk about TV being the cure for boredom. The cure for boredom in 2018 is Instagram. People are using it anywhere they go to kill a moment in time. Time spent has exploded. Usage is now up to 1 billion people. I mean, this is the dominant cure for boredom for people all around the world. It's going to grow from 1 billion to 2 billion users. Time spent is growing. It's basically becoming the mall where everybody finds goods and services that they're interested in. The targeting is incredible. I think as you look at that product, you can make a you could make a reasonable argument that over the next 5 years, maybe it's 7 years, but that Instagram will be a bigger business than core Facebook. And look, maybe they get Facebook Stories to work. I don't know over what time frame. It may work better in other countries, but I believe that the growth potential of Instagram over the next 5 to 7 years, as they get things like Stories monetization to really kick in. They've already got the users. It's the monetization that really has to kick in. As they figure out commerce and story monetization, let alone communication on that platform, Instagram seems like a beast that really is going to create tremendous value for Facebook shareholders. And so, yes, there's definitely been mistakes. There's definitely been challenges in terms of cleaning up the news feed and making it, a safer place. Look, it's the internet. There's lots of challenges with that. Google's had those challenges. Everyone's having those. Twitter, obviously. There's lots of companies having those challenges. But when you look at the long-term, meaning 3 to 5 year opportunities facing Facebook, I think there's a great growth story for investors. And I think that's why the stock is responding so positively today.
Sarah, big test coming up with the midterm elections. You know, Facebook and WhatsApp didn't necessarily fare so well in the Brazilian elections. What are we expecting to see in the next week?
I think that Facebook is still working it out. I mean, they're every day finding new ways that the platform is being taken advantage of. They're reacting to reports in the media about certain pockets of their universe that are needing attention, and maybe accounts that need to be deleted. That's still happening. So, you know, when we get to the midterms next week, they have their war room, their attention is on this, but it's still going to be a process of whack-a-mole as they try to figure this out. I mean, their system is still based on content that goes viral, content that gets shared, right? This is still the stuff that people are clicking on. This is still what makes Facebook money. And so it's going to be very difficult for them to really make a meaningful change. In the meantime, it's going to be very reactive.
Now, Rich, in the last few months, over the last year, we've seen the founders of WhatsApp, Instagram, Oculus leave the company. We've seen a broader protest from users about privacy, about how Facebook handles their data. And there seems to be this long-term question over whether users are going to buy that in the future, buy this idea that Facebook can rent their data and make money off it. You know, does that longer-term concern worry you?
Well, first of all, I want to correct two things that you said. One, Facebook doesn't sell data to third parties or rent it out to third parties. They use your data, obviously, to sell ads, but they don't sell that data to third parties, never have. I think that's been kind of an ongoing kind of talking point that it isn't factually true. Also, when we talk about users leaving over all of these issues, the data would show that Facebook users on a daily basis continue to grow on a sequential basis. And I'm not talking about moving from Facebook to Instagram, but actual Facebook users continue to grow. You know, they've never gone down on a global basis. And even in the US, they were flat. And if not for a change in how they're accounting, they actually would have grown this quarter. And so I think there is this perception that people are fleeing Facebook, but they're actually not. It's not growing the way it used to, which is certainly a fair criticism. But the kind of the fall off where somehow this change in consumer behavior, I think, is a little bit misleading. I think the reality is, look, companies that get bought, entrepreneurs, there's a natural transition. I mean, I don't believe that Instagram would be what it is today if it hadn't been bought by Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg's vision for what this could become. You know, Instagram stories would not have existed, in my view, if this company wasn't part of Facebook and Mark hadn't forced that to happen.
I just wanted to take a point about, you know, you say Facebook doesn't sell its data to advertisers. That's true, but what they sell is access to those people.
Sure.
They're selling that attention from those people, and so it really, I mean, that is where the data collection is coming from. And I think the company loves to have this debate of like, are they selling your data? Are they not? They love to say that we don't, but that doesn't take away the privacy concerns of Facebook having all this data, maybe more than users realize they have.
No, and that's totally fair. The only thing I would respond to that is when you look at the internet, ad retargeting. I mean, click on any Google link and see how you're retargeted, or click on an Amazon product and see how you're retargeted. I mean, using data to target advertising is something that's been growing on the internet for years and years. And I would argue where it becomes a problem is when it's done poorly. When it's done well, I mean, I think if you look at the ads on Instagram, they increasingly feel like content where you actually want to buy the products and services. You want to buy the Allbirds, you want to buy the Rothys. Like, you see things that you actually want to buy, and it's driving real businesses. I think where it's used inappropriately, or where they deliver bad ads, is where the consumer can get upset. So I worry more about the use of data for where it's used poorly. You know, when I go on Snapchat right now, I see a lot of ads. I mean, I see myself, I see hunting ads, and I see dating app ads. Like, I see ads that are completely targeted to the wrong person. That's where I feel like the use of, the lack of use of the data, where it's not becoming a good experience, is actually hurting the service. If the data makes the experience better, I actually think almost every consumer I've talked to would prefer that and likes that experience.